Hello and welcome to this episode of Live with Lizzie Lee. I am your host, Lizzie. Joining me today is Eva Dou, Washington Post China reporter. Thank you so much, Eva, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here today.
So, Eva, can you please tell me a little more about the backstory of your recent reporting on Xi Jinping's career in Fujian? How did you and your colleague decide to go to Fujian to find out more about Xi Jinping's personal history?
Yeah, sure. Of course, we were all preparing for the party congress coming up this month, and this is an important moment in Xi Jinping's career, having finished the first 10 years, which is standard for a Chinese president, and planning to continue on. And so with my teammates, we were discussing, how do we illustrate this? How do we try to get some insight into China's leader? And the natural choice for us was Fujian, because this is the province where Xi Jinping spent by far the most time of his career before going to Beijing. He spent more than 17 years in Fujian, working his way up from a local official to head of the province. And during that time, the Tiananmen Square protest did happen in 1989, and this seemed like, a critical moment for both him and officials across China at the time. So that was something that we were curious about.
Right. And so in Fujian, you discovered a lot of first-hand resources, as you report in the article. What do we know about Xi Jinping's early career in Fujian? Can you please share some of your surprising findings with our audience?
Yeah, sure. What we know is that he started out as a local level official, the chief of the city Ningde, which is not the biggest city in Fujian. And so during that time, he was in his mid-30s. It was the time when his career was really starting to take off. And what we did find is sort of interesting speeches and writings in 1989, when these pro-democracy protests were going on across the country. And they're mostly remembered as being protests in Beijing, because of course the ones in Tiananmen were most famous, but it was going on across the country. Nationwide, young people were demanding political change. They were demanding accountability from their leaders. So this was very likely the first major challenge of Xi Jinping's career, was dealing with these protests at a local level, and at a national level, it was a challenge for the government. What we found is, as he gave a speech to local journalists shortly before the crackdown, where he was arguing for the necessity of controls on the media. And then again, after the crackdown, he wrote this essay in a local literary journal, which is speaking sort of directly to local intellectuals, arguing about why there needs to be restrictions on art and literature, and kind of drawing the connection quite directly to political stability in the country.
Right, and Fujian is also important for another reason, which is its proximity to Taiwan. Did Xi Jinping express his views on Taiwan back then? Are there anything that we should be aware of?
He did, to an extent, and I think it is important to note that for all these topics like censorship and Taiwan, he was only a local official at that time, and there's only a certain degree that he can have a personal opinion on that. A lot of times he is expressing sort of the official line, which is a nationwide one. And so for Taiwan and Fujian, we did see in some of his writings at the time, when he rose to a provincial level position. He was there during the Taiwan Straits crisis. And of course, Fujian is right across the strait from Taiwan. And so there was, the missiles that were being fired into the water surrounding Taiwan at the time, as a warning, were being fired out of Fujian. There were buildup in military installations, and Xi Jinping did express it was important to build up the military presence in the province because of, he said, the threat of Taiwan splitism. So you can see, like, from an early in his career, this was an issue he dealt with directly.
Right. And your article is titled Xi Jinping's Quest for Total Control of China is Just Getting Started. I know you have spoken to many experts on this topic, but what do you or they generally expect in terms of policy directions after the 20th Party Congress and during Xi Jinping's third term?
Yeah, of course, no one can know for sure right now. But what we do know is that sort of securing this third term was sort of a challenge for Xi Jinping beforehand. And so, to a certain extent, in the past 5 years, his policies had to be sort of moderated to gaining that sort of internal support in the party for him to continue on longer than other leaders. And so now he's gained this support, gained his third term, and it's commonly believed he does have a bit more freedom now going forward for pursuing his policy objectives. And I guess the other thing to keep in mind is he'll be looking towards his legacy as a leader of China who's stayed on for this many years. He'll be put alongside Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping for comparisons in history. And so he's probably going to be keen to have accomplished something significant during his tenure.
Thank you so much, Eva. This is such an insightful conversation. We will include a link to your Washington Post portfolio so our audience can follow along with some of the other works you've been doing on China. Thank you so much. If you enjoy our discussions here, I'm sure you would find value in our new powerful marketplace tool for investors, also called China Edge. It tracks, distills, and analyzes both Chinese language and English language materials about Chinese companies, business leaders, and government entities, and reviews the often hidden links between them. For our YouTube viewers, we are offering a limited time 50% discount. Just go to the link you see on the screen and use the code EDGE50. Also, sign up for the China Edge newsletter. It's a daily 2-minute rundown of China business news you don't want to miss. The link is right here on the screen. You can also click on the link in the video's description section to get your complimentary subscription today.